Hello and welcome to another edition of Kaleid'her'scope. This is Magda Zenon here today with three awesome young people who recently participated in a workshop hosted by Aequitas, and a human rights NGO in Tochny. They did the workshop, and the workshop was about gender inequality and gender-based violence. With me I have Andreas Andreou, he's a research and project manager at Aequitas, and he was also the project coordinator. I have Natalia Pavlou, who is a simple citizen but also linguist, and she was involved in the workshop. And Malak Ejledi, who also participated in the workshop and is doing her master's in law at Euclid University. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start with Andrea, who's the project coordinator. Tell us a little bit about the project, what you did for the weekend, and why gender equality.
Why gender equality? Okay, so this is a week-long workshop on gender inequality, and we do this in the framework of our efforts to raise awareness and educate people, especially young people, about topics which we believe matter and that young people should have both an education on as well as to be empowered to act upon them. So this topic we thought it's a very important topic given the fact that women face multiple layers of discrimination or inequality in general in many aspects and domains of life. So we decided to write a proposal, and we submitted it to the European Youth Foundation of the Council of Europe, and we're very happy and very lucky and grateful for their support. So we created this week-long workshop in an effort to raise awareness and bring together young people, not only Cypriots but also Malak from Libya, and we have others from Russia, from Congo. Where else?
Russia.
From Russia.
Norway.
And we had a very fun but at the same time educational time together.
And what did you hope to cover? I mean, gender inequality is a very broad subject. What were the main issues you wanted to, besides the gender-based violence? Although besides, it's a very big subject.
We talk about domestic violence, both through activities but as well as through the presentation that we had from Spavo. We also touched upon female genital mutilation. We had with us Mixed Mediterranean Institute for Gender Studies, and we also had Willy Todorov from the Association for the Recognized Refugees. And we saw also how being a refugee woman in Cyprus, for example,
is double discrimination.
Exactly.
But Mixed has done a lot of work for female genital mutilation, have they not?
Yes, they've done work, and they presented not only facts and statistics about female genital mutilation, but more general ones, which help us to understand the wider picture of gender inequality in Cyprus.
And how many people, you aimed this at young people, men and women, or just women?
Yes, men and women, approximately 20, around 20. And we wanted to bring people who we believe that not only they will be educated, but also inspired to become multipliers at some point in their lives, multipliers of this knowledge, or people who will be able to take the knowledge and do something in their either professional life or personal.
Oh, I think that's the most important thing that needs to happen when you do these workshops, is you don't just want to influence the person that's there, you want to make sure that person becomes at least one more person.
Exactly.
You want to pass on the knowledge. Malak, you went to this workshop, why?
Well, I have a growing interest in human rights, and I am a feminist, but I also want to build on that. I want to broaden my knowledge regarding this topic, because honestly, when I first went to it, I thought I knew basic knowledge about how gender-based violence is manifested in our society and how there is discrimination towards women, but I was actually very shocked to the extent of it, even in Cyprus. I feel like European countries in general, we have the illusion through law and just society in general that there is gender inequality, but in practice there isn't really, in reality there isn't, and it's just small things, like everyday things, that actually shocked me at the end of the day. So
But
it's
it
just
is,
raising awareness about the whole issue.
I think the biggest eye-opener is to realize that though we live in a first world country, though we are EU, though we do have the legislation in place, it's an illusion.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an illusion. And you, Natalia, why did you go?
Well, that kind of goes back to why I kind of said that I am a citizen to start with. I participated at the workshop as a woman growing up in Cyprus, and growing up here, I was often subject to many stereotypes of what being a woman means in Cyprus.
Like?
And
Give us an example.
like, for example, everyday things.
Make coffee for your brother.
Yeah, bring the food, cook the food, make coffee, clean, do the housework, things like that. When it's these little things really that also manifest gender inequality, I think. So, as a woman growing up in Cyprus, I often found myself in conflict as to what my expectations are, given what society was telling me and what I wanted to believe in. And that kind of ties into the fact that I'm a linguist, and I know very well how people can use language to manipulate the way you think. So for example, in linguistics, we have a technical term we call implicature, and that's when the meaning of the sentence or the words goes beyond the actual explicit meaning of the words.
So the underlying, the subliminal implication,
Right.
not what you
Right.
see, not the
Right.
face value.
So for example, when someone tells you, that's fine, you're a woman, that carries a lot of inferences and implicatures that goes beyond the fact that, you identify as a woman or your characteristics look like you're a
Like
woman.
a female.
It goes beyond that and actually means that there are certain expectations of you to behave in a particular way that we all understand, I think, in this room. So
Don't be a girl.
Don't be careful.
Don't be a girl. When you're doing something, you're acting just like a girl, which means
Yeah.
hormonal, emotional, weak,
Right.
whatever.
and how often do you hear, it's okay, that's fine, you're a man,
Yes.
right? So
Or
so
boys
as a-
don't cry.
right.
Boys
Why
don't
not?
cry.
Right. So as a participant, as a woman growing up in Cyprus, and as a linguist, I'm really interested in these issues. I'm interested in understanding how stereotypes often sort of mask the problem, right? So we're often raised to believe that it's okay to be subject to gender inequality and further on gender-based violence because of certain stereotypes. And that sort of goes through the language as well, right? Language is the means, if you want,
Absolutely.
to sort of give rise to all of these issues. So,
But that's, sorry to interrupt you, that's why a lot of the time us more experienced gender activists always say the first people that need to be educated are the teachers and the media, because the words they put and you read every day, you actually absorb and have this undertone of meanings. Do you want to say something?
Yes,
about
that on our way here in the car we were talking about how very often we experience different forms of violence, maybe domestic violence or the stereotypes and everything else, and they are so widely hidden that you don't even recognize. Not only you don't understand your human rights which are violated, but you don't even recognize and you don't even realize that you're a subject to
that it's happening,
victimization.
yes, yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Malak, with what expectation did you go to this workshop? What were you expecting to learn from this workshop?
Because I'm a law student, I was expecting to see more of like the laws that impose the women's rights and all that, and we need to criticize them. That's my expectations, just to learn about the laws and all that. But honestly, it went beyond that. We learned about literally just waking up as a woman, how it affects you from the morning till night, and overall your whole experience in this life. So not just laws, but also politics, also culture. All of these things impact how gender inequality is a growing issue.
But I think that's the biggest illusion here in Cyprus, that we do have the legislation. It's
Yeah.
all in place. You can't fault anyone for that, yet it's not there.
Yeah, that's also a comparison I would draw between Cyprus, let's say, and Libya, where I come from. For example, in Libya, we lack legislations that emphasize women's rights and all that. Even after Gaddafi's fall in 2011, still, when they rewrote the constitution, they turned a blind eye when it came to gender equality. They didn't even recognize it as a significant issue.
I hate to break the news to
So-
you. This is an issue we've got apparently a Cyprus peace process going on, okay? We have been trying to lobby the negotiators because they will be creating a new constitution.
Yeah.
Okay? They'll be creating legislation. We have been lobbying them that you don't create a gender equality technical committee on the side because you don't marginalize it. You need a gender expert in every single technical committee you have, because gender is not just a sideline.
Yeah, that's what I believe. I believe it's so significant to the point it should earn a say in the constitution.
But
It
in
has to
every
be-
part of the constitution.
Yes, every part of it. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not just
definitely.
it's not just a gender issue. It's
No.
also a property issue. It's a legislative issue. It's a education issue. It's a scientific issue. It's everything needs to be gendered.
Yeah, of course, because it branches out, definitely.
It branches
yes.
out because equality. We have the illusion here in Cyprus that equality is only Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot,
Yeah.
and all the other inequalities are. Anyway, I'm getting off the course. What did you go? What was your expectation when you went to the workshop?
I was expecting to meet people like Malak, who
Good.
have informed knowledge and education behind these issues, the legislation that's in place, the laws, the different processes that I am not familiar with, and be more informed about it, get more educated.
And you, who was the project coordinator, what methodologies did you use?
We use the human
Were you
rights.
planning to use?
Yeah, we use the human rights education, which is it's much different than the formal education that we experience in schools. For example, in schools you have a teacher and you are the student, and you sit back and you just listen to the expert. But in the non-formal education and the human rights education methodology, the student is part of the learning process and is not. The trainer, for example, is the facilitator of the learning, is not just someone who just has the knowledge and pass it.
So it's more
So
interactive.
It's a more interactive, much more interactive, and we use different methods such as activities, for example, or games, simulations, presentations, talks, and I think this is the best way in which you can have someone learning in a very interesting way and participatory.
Well, I think the one reason education fails, formal education fails, is because there's no interaction.
Exactly.
I've watched my son who hated school. The minute he got into a class where there was interaction, he would bloom.
And it's so
The
easy
minute
to
you-
bring interaction in there.
Absolutely, because everything you do can be a game,
Mhm.
or a theatre, or a role play. Everything can be done.
And what I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you go into this setting of the role play or the simulation, you learn parts of yourself or your knowledge that it was hidden, or things that you observe but you don't really realize them, and then something happens there and you understand and you see things from a much different perspective. And I think that's one of the main strengths of this methodology.
Well, the whole point of learning is not just to learn information, it's also learn about yourself.
Exactly.
Because you think you know, you think you don't discriminate, and you suddenly realize you're also using these discriminatory words. That because society has brought them in as well, you're suddenly using, oh, you're being blonde. And then, did you enjoy this kind of training? Or
Yes,
method?
definitely. The way the workshop was structured, it was structured in a way where the information we would take with us in long term rather than just short term, because it's embedded within us, because we gained the information through a discussion, through an activity. So it kind of painted a picture in our mind, but also the dynamic of the group was very beneficial because we had people from law background, psychology, sociology and linguistics, yes, of course, academics as well. And so you get to see the different point of views of how people, like the different methodologies they use in analyzing, let's say, a case study or a problem that we were trying to figure out a solution for. So that it's overall it was really good. It was very informative, and the way it was structured in a way where we're definitely going to remember the information.
But it's the whole point of any kind of information you have is that it depends on how you're looking at it, from which perspective you're looking at it. And if you're going as a law student, you're only going to have one perspective, which means if you bring in a linguist or a sociologist or a political scientist, you're going to actually three-dimension the discussion. It's going to be a far more holistic discussion. And you tell me, how did you enjoy the...
One of the things that I found most useful was the couple of activities we had actually on talking about case studies. Think about specific scenarios. We were divided in teams, and we had to discuss the scenarios and to what extent those count as gender-based violence and what could have been done, what needs to change in the society so that things will be prevented, or rather, not about prevention but proaction, as we talked about. So I think it was very useful looking at specific details, things that happen every day, scenarios that really happens to our neighbor, if you think about it.
And sorry for interrupting, they can very easily happen to us.
So
I want you to tell me, what is I think the thing that surprised me every time I have a discussion about gender-based violence is how wide it is, and how many types of violence there are that we actually don't realize. Which is, I want you both to answer this for me, which is the one type of violence that surprised you? That you didn't realize it was violence, but it is violence?
if I may say,
Of course.
the indirect. So we talked about direct and indirect types of violence, or rather, if you wanna have a better distinction, physical versus psychological. So I never actually realized that. I don't know to what extent that is covered by the law. Maybe Malak can join the discussion here. But psychological violence can be gender-based violence as well.
Not it can, it is.
Right. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely psychological based violence is definitely.
Give me an example. What is psychological violence?
Well, it can be done in different ways. For example, we're talking about a relationship dynamic where it's verbal violence. So you undermine the person, oh, you're useless, with comments like that over and over again. And this is embedded into their minds. And, it manifests its way into creating mental issues, mental health issues, such as depression and all that. And I feel like it's also very dangerous because there's no bruise that you can go to the doctor and show. So
or to the court,
and to the
try
court
to find
and all
justice.
that. That's why it's difficult. But also I want to emphasize the fact that I don't believe there are different types of domestic violence. Everything is a domestic violence. It's just the manifestation. And this is something I was taught by one of the trainers there, Natalia. And so I actually, before I heard that, I didn't make that distinction. But after she explained it, I agree. I definitely agree. Because if we make a distinction between psychiatric based violence and then physical based violence, then we have to also prioritize which one is like more significant.
No, they're all significant.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's just a
significant.
different manifestation of the
Actually, the one that actually surprises me, and I've been a victim of that, is economic violence. That you don't realize poverty.
Poverty, yeah, definitely.
Whether it's in a relationship where you're the dependent party, or I'm a single parent, and you need subsidies so I think to me it's the economic one is another one that surprised me, that it's actually, it's violence. Tell me, Andrea, which one is the one that, not separate, they all are, I mean, I'm not prioritizing. They're all of equally bad.
I will tell you not what form of violence, but when Spavo was presenting, at some point they presented a video which was showing domestic violence from the perspective of the feelings and the understanding of the child.
I think I've seen that one.
This one from, I think, Norwegian.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yes.
Norwegian.
It was the first time, even though I was very interested in the past on domestic violence, and I studied a lot, I think it was the first time that I have seen it visually from the perspective
So
of
clearly.
yes, from the perspective of the child. And I also experienced this kind of violence, and it was very touching to see how much it affects the child and how many things the children understand and how they experience it.
And they understand it without understanding it. It actually manifests in strange ways later or in different ways.
Yes, and how it affects in the future, and how it creates different not syndromes,
Dysfunctions.
yes.
Dysfunctions.
That sometimes you might need years to fix, even to understand maybe.
First you've got to acknowledge it, and that's the thing,
Since you touched upon the economic violence, I think this becomes extremely relevant at these times, right? We just went through an economic crisis, and especially the youth has suffered a lot. A lot of young people were unemployed, some of them still are, and some of them have partners or even kids, family, right? So I think these times were extremely hard and very likely to see violence at its peak. It's really good that this kind of workshops kind of give an opportunity to young people or to people who can affect other young people to be aware that of these issues of gender-based violence, and know that, you know, whatever is going on, no matter how hard the times are, there are ways, and being aware of what you're doing to the other person and what the consequences are.
I also think it's very important because I think it teaches you a certain amount of empathy. So if someone's being a total idiot, sometimes if you step back and you think, let me walk for 5 minutes in their shoes, or let me disconnect from just knee-jerking, reacting back. You step a bit away, you learn how to breathe. We've all got to learn how to breathe because we all in some way are victims of some kind of violence. So if we all decide, get a bit of awareness raising, a bit of training, if you learn how to breathe, think about the knowledge, take a step back, and then react if you need to react.
One of the foundations of the methodology of non-formal education and human rights education is to build skills, knowledge, and attitude. And empathies, it goes into the attitudes that we try to build, which is very important.
How do you teach attitude? I mean empathy, how do you teach empathy?
I think first of all by helping the other person to understand, to go into the shoes of the other person. I think it's one of the best ways. And these experiential methods are very helpful, I think, to...
What, telling stories?
Not only telling stories, but trying to, through different methods, storytelling or theater play or discussions, I think you go into the depth of an issue. And by that, you try to help the participant to feel how it will feel for themselves if they were in this position, for example.
Okay. What is the best lesson you learned over the weekend, Malak?
Best lesson.
What is the most important thing that you took home with you, that you'll keep with you?
That anyone can be a victim of gender-based violence. We had a discussion where we had to draw some features and talk about the characteristic of a victim of gender-based violence. Everyone said different things, so unemployment, for example, someone that doesn't have family, but at the end of the day, anyone can be a victim, and you can't really tell, you know, so there's no really boxes or features that you need to tick in order to become a victim.
Okay.
Anyone is...
can be.
Yeah, can be, which...
And you even might be.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it's very easy to become.
Yeah.
And you, Natalia, what's the lesson that you learned, that you took home with you?
That I know very little about what's going on around me, or even in Cyprus, or even in the world. That there are options out there. You can, if you are facing an issue, if you are feeling that you're being receiving some sort of violence that somehow relates to your gender or your identity, there are services there for you, and you need to speak up, talk about it to people, and there are options for you.
What about learning just to verbalize it? Because I think a lot of the time we often have a support system around us that we don't realize is there.
Yeah.
Going to your friend and say, you know what, Andrea, this is happening to me. Can you help me? Am I wrong?
No, of course not. I was going to say that when we had Spavo with it and talking about domestic violence, it's something that they emphasize, that victims of domestic violence very often are either scared or they feel ashamed to talk about it, because maybe there are many stereotypes or many fears. They fear, for example, that this will destroy the family if I go and speak up, or if things will get worse, for example. But what I believe is that once you speak up, something breaks in the violence. It's only, nobody can guarantee how it's going to
No, there's no guarantee.
to unfold. But then I think that when you speak up, you go into the next chapter of what you experience there. And there are indeed many people who can support you. One of the things, apart from the personal cycle that we have, one of the things that we want to do in an effort to help is that we will create a manual, not only with case studies and the legal framework, but also with an index of organizations and services that can help. But yes, speaking up to your cycle and your network is very, very empowering.
Because you'll be surprised how many ears there are around you. And if there aren't a lot of ears, change friends.
And it's also very empowering, not only for the victims themselves, but for us also to sit together for 1 week and exchange this information. Maybe most of us are not victims of violence or something similar, but it's very powerful and empowering, yes, and to sit together and share this knowledge.
But I remember, because I was in an abusive marriage, and when I was getting ready to leave, people would say to me, don't leave, you can't.
Don't leave.
You're going to hurt your son. You're going to spoil the family. In fact, my son came to me about 5 years ago, 10 years after I left, and he said to me, Mom, the best thing you ever did for me was leaving the marriage. Because you do, even when you come out, you think, am I doing the right thing? But violence is good for no one. Because you spoke about kids. It's good for no one. It's unhealthy at every level. So stepping away and trying to create a healthy atmosphere.
Yeah,
It's
and
better for
never putting excuses.
Yes.
No matter what, just do not put excuses. It's not something that should be tolerated. And once that is the core, ideology you face your family with, then you will definitely leave.
But you know what? It's really easy because I've been there.
It's a very vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle because when you're in an abusive relationship, you end up believing that is what you're worth. So it takes something quite radical to make you sit and think and say, no. Surprisingly enough, the thing that jump-started me, that got me out of it, was my son. Everyone said this, a child comes in suddenly, you're not going to leave. The minute my son stepped into the equation, it was suddenly, well, I've been dealing with this, but he doesn't deserve it. And I stepped out. So your violence works at your self-esteem. It chips away. So it takes having friends around you. It takes something quite radical inside it. It takes light bulb moments to say, you know what, I'm worth more. I'm worth more.
We actually talked a little bit about that at the workshop. It's often the case that women that are subject to domestic violence are often share the same characteristics. So these are women that even if they were successful in any way that society defines successful at a given context, they were slowly sort of led to a particular pattern, like being staying at home, not working, being dependent on the man, not having too many friends. There are particular characteristics that women that
the perpetrator isolates you.
Yes, yes.
So
Are you planning more workshops?
This is one of the main, apart from the bigger projects that we do, which have to do with research and creating outputs, we really love these kind of workshops, and we write proposals quite often. The next one that we are having is on February. It's on peace education
Okay.
and inner peace and peace building.
It starts inside and then it carries out.
Yes, exactly. So this is one of the elements that we will focus on. We will publish the call for participants very soon.
Okay.
So if people are interested, they can follow our social media.
Yes. They must like your Facebook
Yes, Aequitas Human Rights NGO.
Mhm.
We will accept 4 participants from Cyprus, but we will have people
Okay.
from Spain, from Portugal, if I'm not mistaken, from Turkey, from Poland, and I think some other, from Italy, from Greece. We
And
will
this
be
is for young people.
for young
Okay,
people,
okay.
yes, and we will be 32 participants in total,
Great.
and we keep applying for more.
Okay.
Mhm.
I want to know what you ladies are going to do now with the knowledge you gained. Or what do you think you can do? It's certainly made you stronger and better informed.
I think if I may start, I'm going to start with a story. A few weeks ago, I was walking in my neighborhood. I'm not going to say any names, of course. And someone came up to me and said, "Oh, did you hear?" Pointing at a particular house. "Did you hear their embarrassing news?" And I said, "No, what?" And I was waiting for something really, dramatic.
Shocking, yeah.
They were like, "Oh, the couple was fighting all the time and they broke up." And I was like, what's embarrassing about that? So now I think I'm gonna go back to that person and actually continue that conversation and point out that there's nothing embarrassing to resisting violence at home and seeking for a better life.
What a shallow way of looking at life. It's embarrassing to step away. Okay. But it's true. These things happen. So you're going to start verbalizing when you see shit happening.
Yep.
And you, Malak?
I think I'll just add to that, yes, just verbalizing it, raise awareness generally, whether it's just by exactly like stopping a situation like this from happening in the context of your family, or just like a post on Facebook, for example, that was gonna reach some people, just to emphasize the fact that gender-based violence exists and it's not tolerated, and people should take a step in stopping it. Yeah.
Does it? Tell me, Andrea.
I wanted to add that what you did before, that when you can publicly and very easily say, I was a victim of violence, for example, and you start talking about your experience, this is one of the most empowering things that one can do. It diminishes the guilt.
Yes, yes.
It breaks the myth.
Mm.
I don't know if it happens in other people also, but for me it's very empowering to see people saying that I was a victim of this and that. It makes you feel that you belong to a wider community, that you are not alone.
But you'll be surprised how differently people react. Some people don't want to know because
Yes.
other people will just listen. I don't mind people just listening because I just put it out there because it's there. But some people get embarrassed. You'll see the looks on their faces. But I agree with you, the fact I don't mind saying it because I stepped out of it.
And you have to be proud about it.
Exactly. It took me a while, but I did it.
You have to be proud not only for stepping out, but for overcoming it. For yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything either three of you want to say before we close? Except follow the Aequitas
Yes.
Facebook page to get updated.
I would like to say that for myself and my organization, before becoming a project coordinator of projects like that, I was a participant in projects like that all over Europe. I've been to quite a few. my impression is that you learn many things that knowledge, skills, attitudes, as I said before. I never expected that I will go into a training or a workshop and leave from that a different person, but small things, small changes happen, things that maybe you don't notice them at that point, but slowly by sharing with people, by hearing and experiencing different perspectives, by getting into the shoes of other people, by experiencing and learning through different methodologies, you change as a person. I think there are not many more valuable gifts to give to yourself than knowledge and experience of this kind of sharing and learning. And I will encourage people to not only Aequitas, but there are many organizations in Cyprus and abroad who offer these opportunities, and we are very lucky that we have these opportunities either from the European Union or from the Council of Europe. For my perspective, it's a very valuable tool that shaped my personality in the last years, and I will encourage people to.
But I say to my son, who's now a student, I'll say to him, the things I've learned, the things I know, I haven't learned in my formal training.
Yeah, of course.
I've actually learned in workshops, doing volunteer work, far more valuable. Okay, formal training you needed to get a job, but the other stuff is the one that gives you the substance and the real tools.
And it's something that you have to experience it in order to understand what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
I think
So
if
we
you don't
encourage you to try.
Yeah.
Malak, have you got anything else you would like to say before we close?
Well, I just want to say that, it's sad, but yes, domestic violence exists. However, whoever is right now experiencing such a situation, I encourage them to speak out. There is a number that they can call 1440. There's
That's
other
confidential.
that's definitely confidential, free of charge, and they will get support because they're not alone. A lot of people experience the same thing. They just need to step up, I think.
And you, Natalia?
I would say applying to participate in the workshop was an easy decision for me because I thought the topic was very interesting to what the kind of answers that I'm looking for. One of the things that someone might think before actually applying to these kind of workshops is, I'm gonna be for an entire week with these people
That I don't
in a
know.
village, and I'm a busy person, I have a busy life, right? I am also a busy person, but making time to participate in these kind of things and learn from others and gain knowledge in topics that you might not get an opportunity to discuss anywhere else. As you said, formal training will not often cover the things that you should be thinking about. So I think just putting aside that excuse that I'm busy, I have a busy life, and making time for these kind of things.
Because we will also always be busy.
Yes, there's never the right time, and there's never that breaking time.
Yeah. Another myth that we have to break, I think.
Siga.
Siga.
Yavaş. Okay, thank you for being with me today. Let us know when you have the next workshops.
Okay.
I'll advertise them on the Kaleid'her'scope page and on my personal space. So, and to the two participants, glad to see we're getting more women involved in gender-based violence, because unfortunately anyone can be a victim, and we all need to know that there's someone that will listen to you and there is a way out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.